Okay. I'm Kevin Peters from Book Travelers West. I'm just going to be talking strictly about Workman Publishing today. That's my biggest line and, the most important line that I carry. And this will be a mix of both spring 2020 and fall 2020 titles. As many of you know, because of COVID-19, a lot of spring titles became fall titles. So you'll see that in the dates and the Edelweiss there. But the first book I just wanted to mention that's out now is the Everything You Need to Know to Ace Computer Science and Coding in One Big Fat Notebook. The Big Fat Notebook series is the single best-selling series at Workman. It outsells everything else, including the BrainQuest books, which are close behind. These are designed to look like the notebook of the smartest kid in school. It's a great deal. This is the first time these study guides are edging a little bit older. Next season we have 2 for high school. But computer science is so important, especially in places like the South Bay. And it's a great deal, $14.95 for over 550 pages is just a wonderful deal. The next book I wanted to talk about is really my favorite, and I think the most important book of the spring list that I'm going to talk about, which is Play Like a Girl, Life Lessons from the Soccer Field. I don't have a sample for this, so what you're seeing in Edelweiss is all that we have. They just didn't produce samples because it was a late drop-in, and then COVID hit, and that kind of wiped out the sample production system. But Play Like a Girl is the sequel to Strong is the New Pretty, which was a huge bestseller for Workman, and that book did come out right at the time of the Women's March and things like that. This book was originally intended to accent the Summer Olympics. Obviously, those have been moved, but the need for this book and the market for this book remains for young women in sports. This does have a mentoring aspect in that there are professional sports stars whose photos and quotes are also included along with the girls. So it does add to the age range I think that this book could appeal to. It has been moved to August as a publication, but it's the single most important spring title. I don't want anyone to overlook that. Your Nose I'm not going to talk about, but it's the new Sandra Boynton, very important if you don't already have it. I wanted to highlight ABC Dance and Goodnight Baboon just because the finished editions came in looking so nice. These are by the Moyle sisters. It's Sabrina and Eunice Moyle, who run Hello Lucky out of San Francisco, and really important book. And the follow-up, Goodnight Baboon, is here, but this one really especially looks just gorgeous. Moving on from that is Who Got Game Baseball. So Who Got Game Baseball, I didn't have really a decent sample to sell with when I was out in the field before the shutdown, but the finished edition came in. It looks gorgeous. Derek Barnes is obviously well known. He won the 2018 Ezra Jack Keats Book Award for Outstanding New Writer. Even though the baseball season has been on hiatus, that's all the more reason people might want to read about this. And this does include heretofore talked about players and things like that. It's including people of color that have been previously sidelined in history. So wonderful book, super important book. Stories of the Saints, just wonderful book on the Saints that just came out. And I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it follows a kind of a graphic novel format, more like the way that mythology books in the past have been treated. Moving forward from that, so Premeditated Myrtle, so important. So this is a book that did get postponed to August. It was a spring release. And so this and the second book are going to be coming out on the same day in October. And Premeditated Myrtle has already received some starred reviews. And it's a wonderful Victorian mystery for young readers and middle grade audience. Very important. As you see in Edelweiss, I've included a lot of the reviews that this book has gotten, and that, in general, I do that in my markup, so you'll see that. The next book, which has gotten just incredible reviews, I think it's now 7-starred reviews, Samantha Larbrey's Tigers, Not Daughters. Samantha Larbrey is perhaps the finest writer of magical realism for young readers today, and this book is really not to be missed. It's based loosely on King Lear, but it is much, much more than that, and just check out I'm not seeing the quotes coming up in the markups coming up in that screen share, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but no, the markups aren't coming up. But in any case, I'll reshare those markups, and you'll see all my notes there. So moving on. Next book is Ocean Anatomy. This isn't technically a children's book, but it's so good and so perfect for the children's audience that I included it. It has just wonderful illustrations throughout by Julia Rothman. I love Julia Rothman. This is my favorite book. I would have loved this as a kid, so that's why I'm including it. And I would have loved it from probably 9 on. I would have enjoyed it, and I think a lot of other kids would. And it could even age younger if they're good readers. The next book I wanted to talk about is How to Be a Person. This looks really wonderful. The finished edition came in. I only had black and white copies when I first was going out there, but it looks really great. These are essential skills young people need to know to become responsible adults and responsible young people as well. So it covers all the things you need to know to be an independent person. Really wonderful little book. Moving on, Birdwatch, I'm just going to show. I don't really want to talk about it too much, but it's a really nice series, the Backpack Explorer series. So moving on to the next. So 123 Dim Sum, board book that came in looking just really wonderful. Rich Lowe moved from, I think it was either, I can't remember, I can't see my notes, either Taiwan or Hong Kong, I can't remember, when he was a kid. To the States. And so this is not only bilingual, but it also has the Chinese characters as well. And just a wonderful little introduction to the Chinese language for little ones. The next book, Think for Yourself, I think is really critically important in that in this day and age of fake news and that sort of a thing, it becomes more imperative that young people learn critical reasoning. And this book is a great way to do that. As you can see, the interiors are colorful, wonderful, and I think it's extremely relevant today. The next book I wanted to talk about is Scape Racers. This is the most important, one of the most important YA books I have in the spring season. Got moved to September because of COVID-19, but for young people that like occult sort of fiction, witchcraft-like fiction, this is amazing. The author is non-binary, and so she comes out of queer culture, and that's very well represented here. She's also a Wiccan, so she writes from the inside, and the way that she addresses magic and talks about magic in this book is the way magic is really experienced by people who practice it in this world, as opposed to how it sometimes is portrayed in like fantasy fiction for young people, which is more, more fantasy. And then moving on to She Leads. The reason I brought this up, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous picture book. I'm running over a little bit, so I'm just going to try to wrap this up. But it's a gorgeous picture book looking at the matriarchal culture of elephants, and illustrated by an illustrator from Tokyo. And it's beautiful not only because of the natural history, but again, I think elephant society can teach us quite a bit, being a matriarchal culture. And then the next book.
I'll catch up.
I need to see my screen. So we're moving into fall here. ABCs of Black History I don't have a sample of because it's a fall book and they're not going to produce samples for fall. But critically important book from Workman coming out, and they're still it's still in the production stages, but it's looking just amazing right now. Super happy about that. Moving forward, So Embarrassing. takes a graphic novel approach to awkward moments that young people might experience and how they can cope with that. And moving forward from that, we have Star Wars Origami. I'm going to keep going here. I don't want to talk too much about Star Wars Origami. I just wanted to mention it. Constitution Decoded also takes almost a graphic novel-like approach. So Skunk and Badger is the most important book I have for fall. So, and this is the last book I'm going to talk about, but this has already gotten starred reviews. Amy Timberlake and John Klassen are teaming up for just a wonderful story. Again, it's gotten starred reviews. It kind of looks at discrimination and the way that Skunk is viewed as a vermin. But it's just a wonderful friendship story that's accented by the incredible illustrations by John Klassen, and that'll be coming out this fall. It's my #1 Algonquin Young Readers book for the fall. So I've run over, so that's all I'm going to talk about. There are some more books in the collection that you can check out, and you can see my notes, and it'll tell you a little bit more about what I think about those. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and let's turn it over to Jim.
Hi, everybody. I have a few books to talk about today that are ones that came out during the shutdown, the shuttering, March through where we are right now. So it's basically spring and summer. The first book that I wanted to talk about, I'm basically going to go roughly from, up in age group, from picture book through YA, and also chronologically, publication date-wise. So the first one is a book that you have, hopefully. It's Kamala and Maya's Big Idea by Senator Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, who is a San Franciscan, a lawyer and an entrepreneur who does lots of good works. The illustrator, Ana Ramirez Gonzalez, is also local. She's a Pixar animator, has that in her CD, and she is doing wonderful accompanying illustrations for this story that's based in a true story from Kamala and her sister's youth. Kamala was 10, Maya was 8, and they lived in an apartment complex. This is some of the back matter. But it was the kids' idea to turn their unused courtyard in their apartment complex into a playground for kids. And they met with some resistance, persevered, and the project finally got off the ground with a lot of help from community members. So it's a great story about persistence, about community activism. And there's a line that keeps reoccurring in the book, says, no one could do everything, but everyone could do something. So it's a book for our times. Kamala's star is rising, as you know. And this book is now in its 3rd printing. So make sure you've got it. You may get some special orders from Mina's organization. She's doing a lot of outreach to nonprofits for this book. So it's doing really, really well. The next book I wanted to talk about, I just can't resist. Jules Feiffer, bless his heart, is 91 years old. He's come back to one of his classic characters from Bark George, who is the pup who is a little bit thick-headed. Here, George has a little bit of difficulty learning math, and the illustrations are just so terrific. This is a book that you can put in the hands of people that enjoyed Leo the Late Bloomer. This is Mom. Every time Mom asks a math question, she gets more and more kind of, the body language gets a little more resigned as George kind of persists in not wanting to play the game. But once he falls into a dream, his imagination takes over and the trees start asking him to count them as he's chasing through the trees. By the time he wakes up, guess what? He's got some math skills and he's eager to show it off to his mom. Just a beautiful, fun, bright story. Jules Feiffer's quoted as saying in a recent New York Times interview, as I moved into children's books and then graphic novels, I learned what should have been obvious from the beginning. Words and pictures exist as one, leading into and feeding off of each other. Anyway, it's a terrific little book. Next, I wanted to jump into middle grade. This is a book that came out in March. It's called Efren Divided. Efren is an legal American citizen of Mexican descent, but he's living in fear because his parents are undocumented. And sure enough, the worst thing happens. The mother is picked up by ICE, the family is separated, and he's trying to deal with keeping his family together, dealing with the typical middle school issues. And it is a great, heartbreaking story, but it's filled with hope. It doesn't shy away from the hard realities of life on the margins for these undocumented immigrants in this country. And the author himself is of Mexican heritage. He teaches at Irvine in Southern California. Ernesto Cisneros. It's his first attempt at fiction, and it became an Indies Introduced selection. I think this one's going to be around a long time. Got a nice quote from Sandra Cisneros. Another middle grade novel, which you know very well, Catherine Applegate. This is the sequel to One and Only Ivan, and it is just as good. This is about Bob, the stray dog, who befriends Ivan and Ruby at the mall, and they're eventually put into a zoo, and Bob has a home for the first time nearby the zoo where he gets to visit his buds. But when he finds out that he has a missing long lost sister, it's a trio journey to try and find and connect with his sister. It's really wonderful. It's a great story. He's a very humorous character. The Disney movie of One and Only Ivan, it was set to become a theater release this summer, is now going to be on Disney's streaming service on August 21st. Danny DeVito is the voice of Bob, and if you haven't heard it already, you should hear his audio reading of this book. It's just fabulous. We also have 10 copy signed cartons still left on this, so I know a lot of you have taken advantage of that. So if you have an idea that you can sell signed copies of Catherine's book, please let me know, and I can put in a separate order for you because it's a separate ISBN. Then this one, this is the book by Erin Entrada Kelly, the winner of the Newbery for Hello Universe. And we jokingly said when we read this book, even though she won the Newbery, this is her breakout novel because it's just so good. It's head and shoulders above anything she's written before. It's got a little bit of a tragedy in it too. It's set in 1986, 3 siblings with a difficult home life. And each of them have different temperaments, and their very enthusiastic teacher in 7th grade has them do a science project in which they're each assigned as separate crew members, a position on a spacecraft, and then they are going to watch the Challenger space shuttle mission. And we all know how that ends in tragedy. But what it does is it brings the siblings together in a way that they couldn't have anticipated. Another really heartfelt story. It's terrific, and I think this one is going to be around a long time. We Dream of Space. I forgot to check when I started, so I bet I'm halfway through. Is that right, Anne?
Let me see. Yeah, about that.
Okay.
We're good.
Becoming Brianna is the 4th standalone graphic novel from Terry Livingston, and this time she is connecting with her Jewish character, Brianna, who is going through her bat mitzvah and has a case of nerves and stage fright. So all of these graphic novel hybrids have been huge bestsellers. I think 300,000 all told now. It's hard to read in this, but you see that it's full color, it's full of personality. This is another book that we've got signed cartons left. It's a paperback original, and those cartons are 12 copies per carton. Yorick and Bones, briefly, this is a Harper Alley book. Harper Alley is our graphic novel imprint at Harper that's just officially getting started this fall, but this was an early one. This is a story of a Shakespearean skeleton named Yorick, who is uncovered in the present day by a dog who becomes named Bones by the skeleton, who doesn't even realize he's a skeleton. This is a lot of fun. It is told in iambic pentameter, but because of course the skeleton is Shakespearean. But it's actually for, even despite the language, it's for a younger middle grade reader. And I think that's the appeal of this book. It's a lot of fun. And it's how the two become bonded as friends, even though the dog originally just wants to eat him because he's Bones. A lot of fun. I'm jumping into YA now, and I think you know Elizabeth Acevedo from Poet X, and another book that I love very much, With the Fire on High. In Clap When You Land, she's going back to free verse poetry to tell this story, which is really quite unusual, about two half-sisters that don't know that they're related. They belong to different families. They have the same father. They don't understand that the father is a bigamist until his accidental death on a plane on the way to the Dominican Republic. And eventually they come to know of each other's existence. And the story that's told in alternating voices between the two of them is about finding family during the midst of grieving for a father that each of them had very complex relationships with. This is a hard story to boil down to just a single message, but she is so good at depicting character, at depicting race, and family. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. Two books on our list are actually unusually similar in that they're both about transgender coming-of-age stories. Case and Calendar, you know from several books, all of which have gotten lots of praise. Felix Ever After, gorgeous cover, it's basically an sectional book about a cast of queer main characters across the spectrum of race, gender, and sexuality. Felix is pretty comfortable in his own skin, and yet doesn't always feel the same way about his identity from day to day. So he's Black, he's queer, he's transgender, and he feels that at some point he may just have taken on one too many marginalizations. It does have a happy ending, but it's one of those rare books in this YA community that deals with the ability to question one's own identity, even though you have your own label for yourself. And then this last one is Tobley McSmith, who was a Harper employee, who is a trans male, and wrote his first YA novel about coming out in a Texas high school. And this one actually it's called Stay Gold. It's done as a kind of a rom-com. So you kind of have to accept the bubbly premise, and that is Pony, named after S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. He has moved to a new high school, wants to start over, wants to go underground and just not have to deal with his identity and letting people know who he is. He just wants to get through his senior year under the radar. And yet he falls in love, head over heels in love at first sight, with a cheerleader who is sick of her own kind of career path and wants to become a writer. And as the two kind of connect, it is a witty kind of rom-com dialogue about the two of them getting together. It also has a happy ending. Tobley McSmith is a great advocate for his own book. Some of you may have met him at the Winter Institute last winter. What I have left are paperbacks that you should know about and probably already have in your store. Hello Universe, The Poet X, finally in paperback. The School for Good and Evil #5 that's out as is book #6 in hardcover. just came out this month. The Endling in paperback, volume 2. And The Book of Boy, which is a Newbery Honor book that's now in paperback. So that is my presentation. Anybody have any questions?
There are a couple of links you had wanted us to share. Anti-racism. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and post both of these.
Yeah, I'll tell you about them. One of them is a collection in Edelweiss of Black Stories, Black Lives, and it is something that you can copy and paste or ask me, and I can send you the email link if it's easier. But it's about 42 titles, and it is very specifically about addressing race and anti-racism and bringing it up with kids, YA. It's a wonderful collection.
Thanks so much for being here.